Poor black mom cries for child's medicine. Billionaire behind her says, "Come with me." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The air was thick with tension, the kind of atmosphere you'd expect in a small, crowded pharmacy at the edge of a rundown neighborhood. A tired woman stood at the counter, her hands trembling as she pulled out the last few dollars from her worn-out wallet. Her eyes flicked to the cashier, who shook her head slightly, offering no help. The prescription for her daughter's medicine had been too expensive, and there was no way to stretch the last bit of cash. A soft sob escaped her lips as she clutched the receipt, knowing that without the medicine, her little girl's condition would only worsen. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't go back empty-handed. She needs this." The cashier just looked away, avoiding her pleading eyes. But then, just as the silence grew too heavy, a voice cut through the air. "Excuse me, ma'am. I overheard." She turned, startled. A man, dressed in a tailored suit, stood a few feet away, his face unreadable. He was tall, with dark hair streaked with gray, and his eyes seemed to study her as if he could read her entire life story in a single glance. He looked like someone who belonged in a place far removed from this grimy corner of the city. For a moment, their gazes locked, and there was something unsettlingly familiar in the way he regarded her. Like he knew exactly what she was going through, but also knew the world wasn't going to help her. "I can pay for the medicine," he said, his voice calm, almost too calm. Her breath hitched. "You don't have to," she started, but the words caught in her throat. She had heard people offer help before, only for it to be empty promises. Her eyes darted nervously to the door, then back to him. The weight of her daughter's health pressed down on her. The man didn't hesitate. "Come with me," he said, his tone unbothered by the incredulity in her eyes. "I can help, but we need to go now." She didn't know why she trusted him, but the urgency in his voice, the subtle compassion in his eyes, made her feel like this might be her only chance. Her heart raced as she slowly followed him out of the store, unsure of where this would lead, but desperate for anything that could save her daughter. As they stepped into the cold night, she realized that sometimes the smallest of actions could change everything. Little did she know, this would be the moment that would turn her life upside down. As she stepped into the cold night air, the tension of the day seemed to melt away for a moment. The bright neon lights from the pharmacy flickered behind them as they walked in silence, the man leading the way with steady, purposeful steps. Her heart pounded in her chest, a mixture of fear, confusion, and hope swirling inside her. She hadn't expected this, hadn't expected anyone to notice, let alone offer help. But here she was, walking beside a stranger who had offered to pay for her daughter's medicine without a second thought. Her mind raced, unsure of what was happening, but her instincts told her this could be her only shot. The man led her to a sleek black car parked on the street. He opened the door for her without a word, a quiet gesture that made her uneasy but somehow at ease. She climbed in, her fingers trembling as she adjusted her seatbelt. The car's interior was polished and luxurious, nothing like her old, beat-up car at home. The smell of leather and expensive cologne filled the space, and for a moment, she felt like she didn't belong here. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to repay you." The man glanced over at her, his expression unreadable. "There's no need to repay me," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm just doing what anyone should do if they can. Your daughter deserves to be taken care of." She couldn't believe it. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. No one had ever treated her with such respect, let alone acted without judgment. The car moved smoothly through the city streets, the glow of the lights passing by. Like a blur. The man, who hadn't introduced himself, seemed lost in thought. She didn't know what to say to him. The silence stretched between them, heavy and thick with unspoken questions. Finally, she broke the quiet. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her voice still shaky. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." The man turned his gaze to her, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if he were assessing her. "I've been in your shoes," he said simply. "Not in the same way, but I know what it feels like to struggle. And I know that sometimes, all it takes is one person to step in and make a difference. I'm just here to do that for you." She looked at him, confused. "You've been in my shoes?" she repeated. "How?" The man's lips twitched into a small smile, but it was one filled with sorrow. "I've seen people struggle, people who have no one to turn to. I was once one of those people. But I got lucky. I had someone who helped me, and now it's my turn to help." She stared at him, her mind trying to process his words. He wasn't just some rich guy trying to throw money around. There was something more to him, something deeper that she couldn't quite place. She looked out the window, her thoughts swirling. Her daughter. She could picture her daughter's face clearly, the way her little girl's eyes lit up whenever she got a chance to play with her favorite toy. The thought of her being in pain, struggling to breathe without the right medicine, made her stomach twist with guilt. She wanted to be the one to help her, but she just couldn't. She wasn't enough. "My daughter," she said, her voice trembling. "She needs this medicine. She's been sick for weeks now. I've tried everything, every possible way to get the money for her. But it's never enough." She paused, swallowing hard. "I feel so helpless." The man didn't say anything for a moment, just let her words hang in the air. Finally, he spoke. "You're not helpless," he said, his voice soft but steady. "You're doing the best you can. And sometimes, we all need help. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you human." His words hit her like a wave, crashing through the walls she had built around herself. She looked at him again, the warmth of his gaze wrapping around her like a blanket. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that someone cared. As the car continued to glide through the streets, she felt a small spark of hope begin to grow inside her. Maybe, just maybe, things could get better. Maybe she wasn't alone after all. As the car pulled up to the sleek, modern building, she couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. She had never been inside a place like this before. The polished glass doors reflected the streetlights, casting an almost magical glow in the dark. The man beside her opened the door and gestured for her to get out. As she stepped onto the pristine marble floor, she felt a sense of awe, but also a pang of discomfort. She wasn't used to this world. It was foreign, distant from the life she knew. They walked through the grand lobby, past towering columns and elegant furniture. People in expensive suits moved about, hardly sparing her a glance. The woman behind the desk gave them a polite but distant nod as they approached. "Mr. Stevens, your suite is ready," she said, her tone formal and professional. The man nodded and led her to the elevator. As the doors closed, he turned to her and gave her a reassuring smile. "You're safe here. No one will judge you. This is all about getting the help you need." She wasn't sure how to respond, so she just nodded, her hands still trembling slightly from the shock of it all. The elevator ascended swiftly, and before long, they arrived at a large suite on the top floor. It was unlike anything she had ever imagined. A king-size bed with soft white linens, a breathtaking view of the city skyline, and all the comforts she could ever dream of. She had seen places like this in magazines, but never thought she would step into one herself. "Please, make yourself comfortable," the man said as he gestured to the room. "I'll have dinner sent up in a while. Take your time to relax." She hesitated. It was hard to believe that this was real. Her life had always been about scraping by, doing whatever she could to keep food on the table and a roof over her head. She had never imagined that she would be in a place like this, surrounded by luxury, with no idea what to do next. "I don't belong here," she whispered, almost to herself. The man, Mr. Stevens, heard her and walked over to her. He placed a hand on her shoulder gently. "Yes, you do. You deserve peace. You deserve security. I know it's hard to believe, but you've made it here. Now you don't have to worry about anything else." She looked up at him, his eyes warm and sincere. There was no condescension, no judgment in his gaze, just understanding. Her breath caught in her throat. How had this stranger, this billionaire, come into her life and offered so much when she had nothing? He had no reason to help her. Yet, here he was, offering not only the medicine her daughter desperately needed, but also a place of safety and calm. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "I never expected anything like this. It's more than I could have ever dreamed of." He smiled softly. "You don't have to thank me. All I ask is that you let me help. And when the time comes, when you're ready, I want you to know that you are never alone. I will always be here to support you and your daughter." Her eyes welled up with tears, but she didn't cry. She felt something different this time, a mixture of gratitude, relief, and a sense of hope she hadn't felt in so long. She walked over to the window and looked out at the city below. The lights twinkled like stars, a world of possibilities stretching out before her. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream, just for a moment, about what her life could be like if she didn't have to worry about the next meal, the next bill, or whether her daughter would survive. She had always fought to keep her head above water, but now, for the first time, she felt like she could breathe. She wasn't sure what the future held, but in that moment, she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't in this alone anymore. As the days passed in the luxurious suite, she began to settle into a routine, though the sense of disbelief never quite left her. Every time she woke up in the soft, king-sized bed, her first thought was that it had all been a dream. But it wasn't. The gentle hum of the city outside, the clean towels, and the room service waiting at her door told her it was real. Mr. Stevens, the man who had once been a stranger, had kept his word. He had given her a sense of peace, even though she still felt like an outsider in this world. The medicine for her daughter was a blessing, but it was the kindness he showed that kept her awake at night. She had never been treated with such respect. She had never been made to feel like her struggles mattered. Her life had been defined by the small victories of survival. But here, in this strange and beautiful space, she was starting to think of a future beyond just getting by. One afternoon, as she was looking out the window, her daughter's laughter echoed in her mind. She hadn't heard her laugh like that in a long time, playful and full of joy. The memory brought a smile to her face, and for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine what life could look like if she could provide more for her child. She had always dreamed of giving her daughter the best, but reality had always gotten in the way. She had never been able to offer anything but her love and her determination to protect her. But now, with Mr. Stevens' help, things were changing. As if on cue, there was a soft knock at the door. She opened it to find a young woman standing there, holding a tray of food. "Your dinner," the woman said with a smile. "Mr. Stevens asked me to make sure you're well taken care of." She nodded gratefully, stepping aside to let the woman in. It was the little things like this, being taken care of, that made her feel uncomfortable. She wasn't used to relying on others, let alone having someone do things for her without expecting anything in return. As the woman set the food on the table and left, she sat down and picked at the meal. Her mind was elsewhere, lost in the thoughts of the future. She had never asked Mr. Stevens about himself, but the more time she spent in his world, the more she realized how little she actually knew about him. Why had he chosen to help her? Why had he gone so far out of his way for someone like her, someone with nothing? It was a question she couldn't shake. She knew he had money, more money than she could ever fathom, but that wasn't enough to explain his kindness. As she took another bite, she heard the sound of footsteps in the hallway. She turned, expecting the woman who had brought her dinner, but instead, Mr. Stevens appeared in the doorway. He was dressed casually in a black sweater and jeans, a rare sight compared to the sharp suits he usually wore. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his tone light. She was surprised but nodded. "Of course." He sat down across from her, his eyes studying her for a moment. "How are you feeling?" he asked gently. "Better," she replied, her voice still tentative. "I've never had a meal like this before." He smiled. "Well, you deserve it. You and your daughter." She glanced at him, still unsure of what to make of his words. "I don't understand," she said finally. "Why are you doing this for us? You don't even know me." He leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "I know what it's like to be in need," he said softly. "I've seen people struggle, and I know what it feels like to have no one. I don't want that for you. I don't want anyone to feel like they're alone." She looked at him, her heart heavy with gratitude and confusion. "But you have everything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't need to help people like me." He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Having everything doesn't mean anything if you don't know what to do with it. I've been where you are. Not exactly the same, but I've been there." She looked at him, trying to read the depth of his words. "How do you know what it's like?" she asked. He was quiet for a long moment, as if weighing whether to share his story. "When I was younger," he began, his voice low, "I didn't come from money. My family struggled, and I watched my parents work themselves to the bone to make sure we had enough. I didn't always understand why they were so tired, why we couldn't have the things others had. But I learned. I learned that hard work and sacrifice are important, but sometimes it's the kindness of others that makes the difference. She was silent, taking in his words. There was something about him that made her feel safe, like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she had thought. I never had a chance to give back to my parents, he continued, his voice quieter now. But I can give to you. I can help you and your daughter. It's the least I can do. She felt a lump form in her throat. She had never expected to find someone who understood her struggles so completely. Thank you, she whispered, the words feeling so small compared to the enormity of what he had offered. He nodded, his gaze softening. You don't have to thank me. Just take care of yourself. Take care of your daughter. That's all I ask. In that moment, she realized that this wasn't just about the medicine or the money. It was about the trust he was giving her, the trust that she could finally start to believe in something more than just survival. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she could start dreaming again. The days that followed were filled with new routines, new feelings, and a new sense of possibility that she had never known before. Each morning, she woke up in the luxurious suite, her daughter playing quietly beside her. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was just getting by. She felt like she could breathe, and more importantly, like she could give her daughter a future that didn't revolve around survival. She had breakfast in the room, something she never thought she would experience. Fresh fruit, warm pastries, coffee that smelled rich and inviting. It was all so simple, yet so far from the life she had lived before. Her daughter giggled as she played with the toy Mr. Stevens had given her, a small gesture that made her heart swell with hope. But no matter how comfortable her new surroundings were, she knew she couldn't let her guard down completely. The life she had lived was full of hardships, and a part of her was still afraid of losing it all. As she sat down at the table one morning, she couldn't help but ask herself, why had Mr. Stevens chosen to help them? She hadn't gotten the chance to ask him more about his life, and while he had been kind, there was still so much she didn't know. What was his motive? Was it truly just kindness, or was there something else? Mr. Stevens hadn't been around much in the past few days. He had taken care of all the immediate needs, but he had given her space to adjust, to let the new reality sink in. He wasn't just throwing money at the problem. He had offered her guidance, a chance to rebuild, but also the freedom to make her own choices. She hadn't yet fully processed the impact he had on her life. That evening, after her daughter had fallen asleep, she found herself alone in the suite, reflecting on everything that had happened. It was quiet, almost eerily so. The only sound was the soft hum of the city outside, and the occasional clink of glass as staff members in the hallways went about their work. She stood up and walked over to the window, gazing out at the city lights. There was a certain beauty in the chaos of it all, streets filled with life, buildings that stretched up to the sky, people moving in and out of them, each one with their own story. She could have been just another nameless face in the crowd, struggling to survive, but now, things were different. She wasn't alone anymore. She didn't have to face the world on her own. The thought comforted her, but it also terrified her. How would she repay Mr. Stevens for what he had done? How could she ever thank him enough? Her reflection in the window stared back at her, and for a moment, she felt like a stranger to herself. The person she had been before, the woman constantly on edge, never knowing where the next meal would come from or if she could afford her daughter's medicine, seemed so distant now. She had been so consumed by survival, by keeping her daughter safe and fed, that she hadn't allowed herself to think about anything beyond that. But now, for the first time, she could think about the future. She could imagine a life where her daughter didn't have to suffer. But she knew she wasn't out of the woods yet. There was still a lot of work to be done, still so many things she needed to figure out. But for the first time, she felt like she had the tools to build something. The sound of footsteps approaching brought her out of her thoughts. Mr. Stevens walked into the room, a quiet smile on his face as he noticed her by the window. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there for a moment, observing her. "It's a beautiful view, isn't it?" he said finally, his voice soft, almost like he was speaking to himself. She nodded, still a little lost in her thoughts. "It's amazing," she said, her voice almost a whisper. He stepped closer, his expression thoughtful. "I'm glad you like it. But I want you to know that none of this," he gestured around the room, "is a permanent solution. This is just the beginning." She turned to look at him, confusion flickering in her eyes. "What do you mean?" He met her gaze, his expression serious. I've helped you in the short term, but you need more than just temporary assistance. I want to help you build a future for you and your daughter. The weight of his words settled over her, and for a moment, she couldn't find the words to respond. She had never thought about it like that, about actually building something for the future. She had always just focused on surviving, on getting through each day. I don't know where to start, she admitted quietly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. He smiled gently, the warmth in his eyes reassuring her. That's okay. You don't have to have all the answers right now, but I'm here to help you figure it out. I want you to know that you don't have to face this alone. She looked at him, feeling a lump form in her throat. She had been so alone for so long, so used to fighting for everything on her own. To hear him say that, to know that he genuinely cared about her and her daughter, was more than she had ever expected. Thank you, she whispered, the words feeling too small for the gratitude she felt. You don't have to thank me, he replied, his voice calm and steady. Just take this opportunity. Build the life you deserve. As he turned to leave the room, he paused by the door and looked back at her. Remember, I'm here when you're ready. She watched him leave, her heart full. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she could finally start building the life she had always wanted, for herself and for her daughter. It wasn't going to be easy, but with Mr. Stevens' help, maybe, just maybe, it was possible. The days after their conversation felt like a blur. She woke up each morning with a sense of both excitement and uncertainty. The room felt more like home now, but the reality of her situation was never far from her thoughts. Mr. Stevens had told her to take the opportunity to build a life for herself and her daughter, but where could she even begin? She was still learning how to exist in a world where everything had been so hard, so uncertain. The life she had known for so long, full of struggle, of getting by, seemed so distant, yet so present. It was like living in two worlds at once. Her daughter, though, had begun to adjust more easily. She was already making friends with the staff, asking questions about the hotel, playing with the toys Mr. Stevens had given her. The transformation in her little girl was already becoming visible, and it filled her with hope. But for herself, the adjustment was harder. She spent the first few days in a daze, unsure of what was expected of her. She had been given everything she needed, but there was still so much to figure out. How could she make the most of this? The weight of Mr. Stevens' offer pressed down on her. He wasn't just offering money or a place to stay. He was offering a chance to start over. But could she really do that? Could she rebuild her life after so many years of just surviving? One morning, as she was sitting at the breakfast table, her thoughts swirling, she heard a soft knock at the door. She opened it to find one of the hotel staff, a young woman who had been kind to her since she arrived. Mr. Stevens asked me to let you know he's arranged for you to meet with a counselor, the woman said, handing her a small envelope. It's part of the program he mentioned, to help you with your goals. He said it's a good first step toward moving forward. She stared at the envelope for a moment, unsure of how to feel. It was one thing to be given money and shelter. It was another thing to be told to meet with someone, to talk about her life, her future. The idea was both comforting and terrifying, but something in her told her that this was the next step she needed to take. She couldn't stay in limbo forever. Thank you, she said softly, her voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside her. The woman smiled warmly. Of course. The meeting is at noon today, and I can walk you there if you'd like. She nodded, unable to speak for fear of breaking down in front of the kind stranger. The rest of the morning was a blur, the minutes slipping away as she tried to prepare herself for what lay ahead. By noon, she found herself standing outside a small office in a quiet part of the hotel, the weight of her decision hanging over her. She took a deep breath and knocked on the door. A gentle voice called from inside. Come in. She opened the door to find a woman in her mid-30s, dressed in professional but comfortable clothes. She smiled at her warmly, as though she had been expecting her. Hi there, the woman said. I'm Lisa. Please, take a seat. She sat down across from her, feeling a mix of nerves and curiosity. Lisa gave her a moment to settle before speaking again. Mr. Stevens told me a little about your situation, but I'd love to hear from you. What's been going on in your life, and what are you hoping for moving forward? She paused, unsure of where to start. How could she explain everything that had happened to her? How could she explain the years of struggle, the constant fear, the constant fight just to survive? But as she looked into Lisa's eyes, she realized that she didn't have to explain everything at once. It was a safe space. "I've been struggling," she began, her voice faltering slightly. "My daughter's been sick for a while, and I've been doing everything I can to get her the medicine she needs. But it's hard when you don't have anything. I've always just tried to make it through each day, but I don't want to live like that anymore. I want something better for her." Lisa nodded, her expression kind and understanding. "It sounds like you've been carrying a lot on your shoulders. And now, you're at a crossroads, where you can start thinking about what you really want for yourself and your daughter." She felt a small knot in her chest loosen, hearing those words. She hadn't allowed herself to think about the future before. She had always been too focused on the present, on survival. But now, with Mr. Stevens' help, she could start thinking about what came next. "I don't know where to begin," she admitted. "I've never had anyone to guide me. I don't even know how to start over." Lisa smiled gently. "It's okay to not have all the answers right now. The first step is realizing that you deserve more and that you don't have to do this alone. You've already started that journey by accepting the help you've been given." The words felt like a weight lifting off her chest. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear them, how much she needed to believe that she wasn't alone in this. "I want to make things better for her," she said, her voice steady. "I want to be the kind of mother she deserves." Lisa nodded. "And you can. We'll take this one step at a time. We'll work together to help you find the path that's right for you." After their conversation, she left the office feeling lighter than she had in a long time. It wasn't a quick fix. There was still so much to figure out, but it was a start. And for the first time in years, she felt like she had a future to build, not just a battle to survive. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and endless paperwork. Every day, she worked alongside Mr. Stevens and the team he had connected her with, people who were there to help her build the life she had once thought was impossible. She still couldn't quite believe that she had come this far. For so long, her life had been defined by scarcity, by constantly scraping for what little she had. But now, with Mr. Stevens' guidance and the resources at her disposal, she could begin to imagine a future for herself and her daughter. One afternoon, as she sat in the small office where she'd been meeting with counselors and financial planners, a message came through on her phone. It was from her daughter's school, an invitation to a parent-teacher conference. She paused for a moment, her heart sinking. It wasn't the meeting itself that made her anxious. It was the thought of facing people who might judge her, people who might look at her and see the life she had lived before. Her daughter, now thriving in the new environment, had made friends, and it felt like the beginning of something new for her. But what if the world wasn't ready to accept them as they were now? What if people would still see the old version of herself, the woman who had nothing? She hesitated, but then, taking a deep breath, she hit the button to confirm her attendance. As the meeting day approached, she found herself feeling nervous. She knew it wasn't rational. She had every right to be there, every right to be proud of how far she had come. But a small voice inside her still wondered if she was really ready to face the outside world again. That evening, as she and her daughter were having dinner, she decided to tell her what was on her mind. "There's a parent-teacher conference coming up," she said, her voice soft. "I'm a little nervous about it." Her daughter looked up, her small brow furrowed in concern. "Why are you nervous, Mommy?" she asked, her voice full of innocence. "Because I haven't really been to one of these before," she admitted. "It's just that I don't know if I fit in with the other parents." Her daughter smiled brightly. "You do fit in, Mommy. You're just like the others. You help me every day." Her words, simple and full of trust, hit her in a way she hadn't expected. For the first time in a long while, she felt the weight of her own fears lift. Her daughter didn't see the struggle, the fear, the hardship. She just saw her mom, a mom who loved her, who was doing her best, and that was enough. The day of the meeting arrived, and she dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made her feel both confident and comfortable. She had spent so much time thinking about how she would be perceived, but now, with her daughter's encouragement, she was ready. The meeting was at a small cafe just outside the school. As she walked in, she noticed a group of parents sitting at a table, chatting and laughing together. She felt a knot form in her stomach, but she reminded herself that she belonged here just as much as they did. The teacher, a kind woman in her 40s, greeted her warmly. "I'm so glad you could make it," she said, her smile genuine. As they sat down, the conversation turned to her daughter's progress. The teacher praised her for being smart, curious, and eager to learn. She could see the pride in her daughter's eyes as she listened to the teacher talk about how well she was adjusting. But it was when the teacher asked her about her own goals that the real conversation began. "How are you doing?" the teacher asked, her tone soft and understanding. "I know this is a big transition for both of you, and I just want to make sure you're getting the support you need." She took a deep breath, surprised by the question. She had expected this to be about her daughter, but here, in this moment, she was being asked how she was doing. It was almost too much, but she appreciated it more than she could put into words. "I'm doing better," she said, her voice steady. "I've been getting help. There's a lot to figure out, but I'm trying to build a future, not just for me, but for her." The teacher nodded. "That's all anyone can do. It sounds like you're on the right track." She felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. For the first time in so long, she didn't feel like she was fighting alone. It wasn't just Mr. Stevens who had offered help. It was the people around her, the teacher, the counselors, the others in her life who were starting to see her as more than just a survivor. She was beginning to feel like a participant in her own life, rather than a passive observer. As the meeting wrapped up, the teacher handed her a small packet of resources, information about local support groups, educational programs, and workshops that could help her on her journey. "Take your time with this," the teacher said kindly. "And if you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out." Walking out of the cafe, she felt a sense of relief and hope that had been absent for so long. She wasn't just a mother trying to survive anymore. She was someone who was building a life, step by step. It wasn't easy, and it would never be without challenges, but for the first time, she felt like she had the tools to face them. She could see her daughter's bright future stretching out before them, and with every passing day, she was becoming more confident in her ability to help her reach it. The weeks that followed felt like a gradual shift, the subtle changes in her life beginning to make her feel less like a stranger in this new world. She had been working with a financial advisor to get her affairs in order, something she had never thought possible before. She learned about budgeting, setting savings goals, and how to plan for the future without the constant fear of what tomorrow would bring. Every day, she felt a little more empowered, a little more confident in her ability to make decisions for herself and her daughter. Yet, as she made progress, something still gnawed at her, a constant, underlying worry. The past had a way of creeping into her thoughts when she least expected it. The memories of struggle, of never knowing if the bills would be paid or if her daughter would be okay, still haunted her. And as her life improved, the fear of losing it all never quite went away. One afternoon, while she and her daughter were sitting in their favorite cafe near the hotel, sipping on hot cocoa, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Mr. Stevens. "We need to talk about your next steps. Let me know when you're free." She put down her cup and frowned. Despite everything he had done for them, there was always a part of her that felt like she owed him something she wasn't sure she could ever repay. Was this meeting going to be about her progress? Was there something else he wanted from her? She texted back, agreeing to meet later that day. As the time drew near, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the conversation ahead of her. They met in the same quiet office where she had first spoken with Lisa, the counselor, and where Mr. Stevens had discussed his vision for her future. He was already there when she arrived, sitting at his desk, a glass of water in front of him. He looked up when she entered, his expression neutral. "Come in, please," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She sat down, her nerves buzzing. "What's on your mind?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He studied her for a moment before speaking. "I've been thinking about your progress," he said. "You've made a lot of headway in a short amount of time, and I'm proud of what you've accomplished. But I think it's time for you to start thinking about the next phase of your life." She swallowed, unsure of what he meant. "What do you mean?" she asked. He leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "You've been given the tools to succeed, but success doesn't just come from the things you're given. It comes from how you use them, and it's time for you to start taking the next step, on your own." Her heart skipped a beat. "On my own," she repeated. He nodded. "I think it's time for you to find a job. You've got the skills, the determination. It's time for you to start building your own future, not just relying on others to help you along the way." She froze, her mind racing. The idea of working, of taking on that responsibility, was terrifying. She had always done everything she could to provide for her daughter, but she had never thought about her own career, her own dreams. "I don't know if I can do that," she admitted quietly. I've never had a real job. I don't even know where to start. Mr. Stevens smiled gently, understanding the depth of her fears. I know it's a big step, he said, but you've already shown you're capable of more than you realize. And you don't have to do it alone. I'll help you, guide you, as much as you need. She didn't know what to say. The thought of stepping into the world on her own, of finding a job, terrified her. But at the same time, there was a part of her that was excited by the possibility. She could see a future now, one where she didn't have to rely on anyone else to survive. For the first time, she could imagine herself building something for her daughter, for them both. I'll help you, Mr. Stevens continued, with finding a job, with resumes, interviews. But you have to be willing to take that step. Are you? She took a deep breath, thinking about everything she had been through, the struggle, the fear, the feeling of being stuck in a life that didn't give her any room to dream. And yet, now, things were different. She had choices. She had the chance to build a new life. Yes, she said quietly but firmly. I'm ready. Mr. Stevens smiled, the weight in the room lifting. Good, he said. We'll take it one step at a time. You're not alone in this. As she walked out of the office, her heart felt lighter. She still had a long way to go, but for the first time, she felt like she could move forward. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. And for the first time in a long time, she believed she could build something that would last. The journey was just beginning, and she was ready to take the first step. The next few days were filled with a new energy, a mix of excitement and nerves. She had made the decision to take the first step, to go after a job, and it felt like a huge leap into the unknown. Every moment was a balancing act between fear and anticipation, but the thought of building a future for her daughter kept her moving forward. Mr. Stevens had made sure she knew she wasn't doing this alone. He had arranged meetings with career advisors, helped her polish her resume, and gave her tips on how to present herself in an interview. But no matter how much preparation she had, the reality of walking into that first interview was daunting. She had always believed that people like her didn't get second chances. Her life had always been about scraping by, never about having opportunities handed to her. And now, here she was, walking into a well-lit office building, her hands slightly clammy as she clutched her purse. Her first interview was at a small nonprofit organization that focused on helping low-income families, and she had done her research. It seemed like a place where she could truly make a difference, a place where her experiences could be an asset. She took a deep breath as she entered the building. The receptionist smiled at her, a warm, welcoming smile, which immediately put her a little more at ease. Good morning, the receptionist said. You must be here for the interview. Let me take you to the conference room. As they walked through the glass-walled office, she couldn't help but feel like she was in a completely different world. The walls were lined with bookshelves, and the space was filled with light, a sharp contrast to the dark and cramped spaces she had lived in for so long. She felt out of place, but at the same time, she knew she had earned the chance to be there. The interview itself wasn't as intimidating as she had feared. The hiring manager was kind and understanding, asking her about her skills, her goals, and her experiences. She talked about her journey, about how she had fought to provide for her daughter, about how the struggles of her past had given her a unique perspective on the work the nonprofit was doing. She wasn't sure if she was doing everything right, but she spoke from the heart, from everything she had learned over the years. By the time the interview was over, she felt drained but hopeful. It wasn't perfect, but she had given it everything she had. As she left the building, she felt a sense of accomplishment that she hadn't expected. She had done it. She had taken the leap. It was the beginning of something new, even if she didn't know exactly what it would look like yet. That evening, she sat in her room, staring out at the city lights, reflecting on the day. She had made it this far. What would the future hold? But before she could get too lost in her thoughts, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Mr. Stevens. I heard about the interview. How do you feel about it? She smiled, taking a deep breath before typing her response. Nervous, but proud. I think I did my best. Moments later, he replied. That's all you can do. You've already shown incredible strength. No matter what happens, you've taken the first step. His words brought a small wave of comfort. She had already done something she had never thought possible. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was living, building, and stepping into a new world. The days that followed were a mix of waiting and preparing. Every day, She worked on strengthening the things that mattered: her confidence, her resilience, and her drive to succeed. She knew the path wouldn't always be easy, but now she had something to keep her going. The phone call came a week later. The hiring manager from the nonprofit called to offer her the job. She could hardly believe it, her heart pounding in her chest as she listened. "We were really impressed with your interview," the manager said. "Your experience and your passion align perfectly with what we do here. We'd love to have you on board." She barely heard the rest of the conversation, too overwhelmed with emotion to focus on the details. All she could think about was her daughter, her little girl who had been through so much, and how she could finally give her the life she deserved. When the call ended, she sat there for a moment, letting the news sink in. It wasn't just a job offer. It was the first tangible step toward the life she had always wanted for her family. That night, after her daughter had gone to sleep, she stood by the window once again, looking out over the city. The lights twinkled below, reminding her of how far she had come. She wasn't sure what the future would hold, but she knew one thing for sure: she wasn't alone anymore. She had the strength to keep moving forward, and with every step, she was building something that would last. She was ready for whatever came next. The first few weeks at her new job were a whirlwind. Every day, she learned something new about the work, about herself, and about what it meant to truly take ownership of her future. She had always been a survivor, but now, she was becoming more than that. She was learning to thrive. Her daughter seemed to adjust just as well. Each day, she came home with a new story about her day at school, the friends she had made, the things she had learned. The smile on her daughter's face every time she spoke about her day was a reminder of why she had worked so hard to make this change. The first time she picked up her daughter from school after starting her new job, her little girl ran to her, arms wide open, excited to share everything. "Guess what, Mommy?" she exclaimed. "I got an A on my math test." She laughed, feeling her heart swell with pride. "That's amazing, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." It was moments like this that reminded her of how far they had come. But even as she basked in the joy of these small victories, there was a part of her that was still learning how to navigate this new world. She wasn't used to stability, to having the space to plan for the future, to dream about more than just the next day. She still had moments of self-doubt, times when she wondered if she truly deserved this life, this opportunity. One evening, after a long day of work, she sat on the couch in their small but cozy apartment. Her daughter had just gone to bed, and she finally had a moment to herself. She reached for her phone and noticed a message from Mr. Stevens. She had been so focused on the day-to-day that she hadn't really checked in with him lately. "How are you settling in?" the message asked. She smiled, grateful for the check-in. She typed a quick response. "It's been great. Hard work, but worth it. I feel like I'm starting to find my footing." She hesitated for a moment before adding, "I'm still not sure I fully believe it's real, though. Some days, I feel like I'm waiting for it to all fall apart." She paused before sending the message, then added, "But I'm trying to believe that this is my new reality." A few minutes later, his reply came through. "It's real. You've earned it. You've made it this far, and I believe you'll keep going. It's normal to feel uncertain, but remember, this is your life now. You have the power to create the future you want. Keep pushing forward." His words hit her harder than she expected. She had never been one to receive words of encouragement. She had always been the one pushing herself, doing everything she could to make sure her daughter had what she needed. But now, for the first time, she was beginning to believe that she could truly build something for herself. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about thriving. She sat back, reflecting on everything that had happened since she had taken the first step. The job, the apartment, her daughter's success in school, everything was coming together. But the most important part was the way she was starting to see herself differently. She wasn't the woman who had struggled alone anymore. She wasn't the person who had to rely on others to get by. She had found her own strength, her own path. The next day, after work, she met with a financial planner that Mr. Stevens had arranged for her. The session was about planning for the future, saving for her daughter's education, creating an emergency fund, investing in her own growth. It felt strange, sitting in the office, listening to someone explain these concepts as if they were within her reach. But as the conversation went on, something shifted inside her. She realized that all of this, everything she was learning, everything she was building, was for her daughter. It was for the future she had always dreamed of giving her, a future where they weren't just surviving, but living fully. That evening, she sat down with her daughter at the kitchen table, the two of them going over the homework for the day. It felt like such a simple, everyday moment, but it was also the life she had always wanted. A life where they didn't have to worry constantly, where they could plan for a future together. "Mom, do you think I could be a doctor one day?" her daughter asked, looking up from her workbook. Her question took her by surprise, but it also filled her with a quiet joy. "Of course you can," she said, her voice full of certainty. "You can do anything you set your mind to." The truth of her words felt like a promise she was making, not just to her daughter, but to herself as well. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building the future she had always dreamed of, brick by brick. As she kissed her daughter goodnight later that evening, she stood by the door of the room for a moment, watching her little girl sleep soundly. The world was still full of challenges, but now, she felt ready to face them. The journey ahead was long, but for the first time, she wasn't walking it alone. She had a purpose now, a future to fight for. And as she walked back to her own room, she smiled softly to herself, knowing that this was only the beginning. It had been a few months since she had started her new job, and each day seemed to bring a new challenge, a new opportunity to grow. She had settled into her role at the nonprofit organization, and while it wasn't always easy, she found herself waking up every morning with a sense of purpose. She was no longer just surviving. She was living, and for the first time, she felt in control of her life. Her daughter had flourished as well. School was going well, and she had made lasting friendships. Watching her child grow in confidence and happiness filled her heart with pride. One evening, after dinner, as they sat together on the couch watching TV, her daughter turned to her, a serious look in her eyes. "Mom," she said softly, "when I grow up, I want to be just like you." Her words took her by surprise, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. She had always worked so hard to give her daughter the best life possible, but to hear her say this, to hear her say she wanted to be like her, was a reminder of how much her daughter was looking up to her. She smiled and hugged her tightly. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "You can be anything you want, and I'll always be here to support you." In that moment, she realized that her daughter wasn't just learning from her, they were learning from each other. The strength, the resilience, the belief that they could build a better future, it was all happening together, side by side. She was no longer just the person who fought to survive. She was becoming the kind of person her daughter could look up to, and that was something she had never thought possible. But even as she reveled in these moments, she knew that the road ahead was still long. She had come so far, but there were still challenges to face. The pressure of living up to the opportunity Mr. Stevens had given her weighed on her at times. It was hard not to feel like she owed him something she wasn't sure she could ever repay. And yet, he continued to believe in her, continued to encourage her every step of the way. One afternoon, she received a call from him, the first time they had spoken in a few weeks. "I wanted to check in," he said, his voice warm but firm. "How are things going? I know it's not always easy, but I believe you're doing great." She hesitated for a moment before answering. "It's going well," she said. "I'm getting used to everything. But sometimes I still feel like I'm not doing enough. Like I could be doing more, or that I should be further along by now." He was quiet for a moment, and she could almost hear him thinking. "Don't rush yourself," he said finally. "You're exactly where you need to be. Progress isn't always about how fast you're moving. Sometimes it's about the small steps you're taking, the way you're showing up for yourself and your daughter every day. You've come so far, and that's worth celebrating." His words hit her harder than she expected. She had always been so focused on the end goal that she had forgotten to appreciate the journey. She had been so focused on getting ahead that she had missed the progress she had already made. "Thank you," she said softly, the words carrying more meaning than she could explain. "I needed to hear that." They talked for a while longer, about her work, about her daughter, about life in general. By the time they hung up, she felt a renewed sense of clarity. She didn't need to have it all figured out. She didn't need to rush. She just needed to keep moving forward, one step at a time. The next morning, she woke up feeling different, more at peace with herself, more confident in her ability to handle whatever came next. She spent the day at work with a new perspective, focusing on the small victories, the way she was growing and improving every day. When she picked her daughter up from school that afternoon, her heart swelled with pride as she watched her little girl walk toward her, holding a drawing she had made in class. "Look, Mommy, I made this for you," her daughter exclaimed, handing her the colorful drawing. It was a picture of the two of them, standing together, smiling. It wasn't just a drawing. It was a symbol of the bond they had built, the love and trust that had grown between them. She took the drawing and held it close, feeling a rush of gratitude for the life they were building together. That evening, as they sat down to dinner, her daughter looked at her and asked, "What's next, Mommy? What are we going to do tomorrow?" She smiled, feeling more certain than ever. "Tomorrow, we keep moving forward," she said. "We keep building. We keep learning. And we keep loving each other every step of the way." Her daughter smiled back, her face lighting up with the kind of happiness that only a child could have. In that moment, she knew that the journey they were on was the one she had always dreamed of. It wasn't always easy, but it was theirs. And that was enough. The next few months felt like a whirlwind of activity. She was balancing her job, her daughter's schoolwork, and everything in between. It wasn't always easy, but there was a sense of peace that had settled into her life. She had found a rhythm, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was just trying to survive. She was building. The organization she worked for had recently announced an internal promotion, and though she had never considered moving up so quickly, she couldn't help but feel a small spark of excitement. It was a reminder that she was moving forward, that the life she had imagined was becoming a reality. Mr. Stevens, as always, was there to support her. He had been instrumental in her progress, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude for the opportunities he had given her. "What do you think?" she asked him one day after they had talked about the promotion. "Do you think I'm ready for this?" He looked at her, a soft smile on his face. "You've been ready for a long time," he said. "You've already proven to yourself that you can handle more than you ever thought possible. This is just the next step." His words resonated deeply with her. She had always doubted her own abilities, always feared that she wasn't enough, that she couldn't handle the challenges ahead. But every day, she had proven herself wrong. She had been doing more than just getting by. She had been learning, growing, and building something real. The day of the promotion interview arrived, and as she sat in front of the panel, she felt a sense of calm she had never experienced before. She was no longer the woman who feared the unknown. She was someone who had faced challenges head-on and come out stronger. The interview itself was smooth, and though she was nervous, there was a quiet confidence in her voice as she talked about her experiences and her goals. When the interview ended, she couldn't help but feel proud of herself. Whether or not she got the promotion didn't matter as much as the fact that she had gone through the process and stood her ground. The following week, she received the news she had been hoping for. She had gotten the promotion. The sense of achievement was overwhelming, but as she read the email, she realized that it wasn't just about the title or the pay increase. It was about the journey. It was about how far she had come. Later that evening, she sat down with her daughter, who was excitedly bouncing around, having heard the good news. "Mommy, you did it," her daughter exclaimed, her eyes wide with pride. "I'm so proud of you." Tears welled up in her eyes as she hugged her tightly. "Thank you, baby," she whispered. "This is for both of us." Her daughter smiled brightly, her joy infectious. For the first time in a long time, she truly believed that they had made it. The road ahead was still full of challenges, but she knew that together, they could face anything. As she looked out the window that night, she reflected on how far she had come. It felt like a lifetime ago that she was struggling to make ends meet, worrying about whether they would have enough food or if her daughter's medicine would be affordable. But now, she was in a place where she could provide for her daughter, where she could dream of a future that was bright and full of possibilities. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about living, and it was about giving her daughter the best future she could. She had built this life for them, brick by brick, and with every challenge, she had become stronger, more confident in her ability to navigate the world. The next day, she sat down to write a letter to Mr. Stevens. She hadn't realized how much his support had meant to her until she reflected on everything that had happened. He had believed in her when she didn't believe in herself, and his faith in her had been the push she needed to take the next step. "I want to thank you for everything," she wrote. "You gave me the courage to move forward, to believe that I deserve more. I've come so far, and I know that this is just the beginning. Thank you for helping me find my strength." She paused before sending it, unsure of what to expect in return, but knowing that she needed to express her gratitude. It felt important to let him know how much his kindness had impacted her life. She didn't know what the future would hold, but she knew that with each step she took, she was creating something real, something lasting. As she finished the letter and hit send, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. No matter what happened next, she had made it this far. And that was more than enough. As the weeks went on, everything seemed to be falling into place. She had not only earned the promotion she had worked so hard for, but she had also found a sense of peace in her life that she hadn't thought possible. The days were still filled with challenges, but now she faced them with a quiet confidence that came from knowing that she was doing everything she could for her daughter and for herself. However, as her life improved, the reality of the past began to creep up on her in ways she didn't expect. One afternoon, she was at the office when she received an unexpected call. It was from a number she didn't recognize, and when she answered, a woman's voice greeted her. "Is this Mrs. Green?" the woman asked. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Yes, this is she. I'm calling from the local child services office," the woman continued. "We've recently received a complaint about your situation, and I'm afraid we need to discuss some concerns regarding your daughter's living arrangements." Her heart sank. She had been living a life of stability for so long now, and the thought of someone questioning her ability to provide for her daughter sent a wave of panic through her. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and the last thing she wanted was for anything to disrupt their progress. "What kind of complaint?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I can't go into specifics right now," the woman said, "but we'll need to schedule a meeting to review the situation." Her mind raced as she hung up the phone, her thoughts spiraling. What could this be about? Had something from her past come back to haunt her? Or was it just someone trying to make trouble for her? She couldn't think clearly. The fear of losing everything she had worked so hard for gripped her tightly, but she knew one thing for sure. She wouldn't let this derail everything she had built. The following days were filled with dread and uncertainty. She didn't know what to expect from the meeting, but she knew that she had to stand her ground. She had worked too hard to let anything take her daughter from her. On the day of the meeting, she dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that was professional but still made her feel like herself. She wanted to show that she was a strong, capable mother, and she wouldn't let anyone make her feel otherwise. The meeting was at a small office, and when she walked in, she was greeted by a social worker who introduced herself as Rebecca. Rebecca was polite but firm, and as they sat down, she immediately got to the point. "We received an anonymous complaint about your living situation," Rebecca said, looking over her clipboard. "The report claims that you're not able to provide a stable home for your daughter." She felt a lump form in her throat. The words hit her like a punch in the stomach. The idea that someone, anyone, could think she wasn't doing her best for her daughter was unimaginable. She had fought so hard to provide for her, to give her a better life. "I've worked hard to give her a stable life," she said, her voice shaky but firm. "She's in school, she's healthy, and she's happy. I don't know why anyone would think otherwise." Rebecca nodded, her expression unreadable. "I understand that, Mrs. Green, but we have to follow protocol. We need to make sure that the environment is safe and healthy for your daughter." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I understand, but I'm doing everything I can. I'm not perfect, but I love her, and I'm providing for her." There was a long silence, and for a moment, she wondered if Rebecca was going to pass judgment. But finally, the social worker spoke again. "I can see that you care deeply for your daughter. I'm not here to judge you. I'm just here to make sure that you have the support you need." Her breath caught in her chest. "Support?" she repeated. "Yes," Rebecca said. "Sometimes it's about making sure that you have the resources in place to keep moving forward. You've come a long way, but we just want to make sure that you have everything you need to continue providing a safe and nurturing environment for your daughter." Relief washed over her, but she still felt a knot in her stomach. The fear of losing her daughter had almost paralyzed her, but now she realized that this wasn't about taking anything away from her. It was about making sure she had the right support. Over the next few weeks, Rebecca worked with her to connect her with additional resources. They set up financial planning sessions, worked on creating an even more stable home environment, and put a plan in place to ensure that her daughter's future was secure. It was a lot to take in, but she felt a sense of peace knowing that she wasn't alone in this anymore. With each step, she gained more confidence in herself and in the choices she had made for her daughter's future. It wasn't always easy, and there were still moments when she doubted herself, but now she had the tools to move forward. As the months passed, she continued to thrive in her job, her daughter continued to excel in school, and the bond between them grew stronger. The fear that had once consumed her slowly began to fade, replaced by a deep sense of gratitude for the life they were building together. And though there would always be challenges ahead, she knew now that she was ready for them. She had the strength to keep moving forward, no matter what. And with each new day, she felt more secure in the knowledge that she was doing everything she could to give her daughter the life she deserved. The months passed quickly, and with each passing day, she felt more and more confident in her new life. The support she had received from Mr. Stevens and the social workers had made all the difference. Her financial planning was in place, her career was growing, and her daughter was thriving in school. It was a life she had once only dreamed of, but now, it was her reality. Despite the progress, she knew the past could sometimes catch up with her when she least expected it. One evening, while her daughter was at a friend's house, she sat in the living room of their apartment, reviewing some paperwork. The doorbell rang, pulling her out of her thoughts. She wasn't expecting anyone, so her heart skipped a beat as she approached the door. When she opened it, she was faced with someone she hadn't seen in years, her ex-husband. His face was familiar, but so much had changed since their divorce. He looked older, worn, but his presence still stirred something deep inside her. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice low, unsure. She hesitated but stepped aside, allowing him in. They stood there for a moment in silence, both unsure of what to say. He finally spoke. "I know we haven't talked in a while, but I wanted to check in. How's everything? How's our daughter?" Her heart tightened at the mention of their daughter, but she managed to keep her voice steady. "She's doing great," she said. "Better than ever, actually." He nodded, but she could see the guilt in his eyes. It was something she hadn't expected to feel, sympathy for him. After all, he had been absent for so much of their daughter's life, leaving her to carry the weight of everything on her own. Still, she couldn't deny that a part of her had hoped for him to step up. "I heard about your promotion," he said quietly. "I've been following your progress. I'm proud of you, you know." She wasn't sure how to respond. His words sounded sincere, but she still felt a wall between them, built from years of disappointment and unmet expectations. "Thank you," she said, the words feeling strange on her tongue. "But you haven't been here. You don't know what it's been like." He looked down, a flicker of regret crossing his face. "I know. I messed up. I've been trying to make things right, but I don't know if it's too late for that." There was a pause, and for a moment, she wondered if she should just tell him to leave. But instead, she took a deep breath, her mind racing. "It's not about making things right with me," she said softly. "It's about our daughter. She's doing well now, and I'm not going to let anything stand in her way. Not you, not anyone." He nodded, his shoulders slumping. "I understand. I just want you to know that I'm trying to be better. I know I've been a terrible father, but I'm here now. I want to help." She stared at him, her mind reeling. The man who had been absent for so long, who had made promises and broken them, was standing in front of her, asking for another chance. But she wasn't sure if she could give him that, or if she even wanted to. "I don't know if I can trust you again," she admitted. "But I'll never stop you from being a part of her life if that's what you want. Just prove to her that you're here for the long haul." He nodded, his eyes filled with remorse. "I will. I promise. I won't let her down." She didn't know if she believed him, but there was a part of her that hoped he would follow through. For her daughter's sake, if nothing else. The conversation ended soon after, and as he left, she stood by the door, watching him walk away. She felt a sense of closure she hadn't known she needed. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a step toward healing. Over the next few days, as her life continued to evolve, she found herself thinking more about the past. She hadn't realized how much it had weighed on her until that moment with her ex-husband. But now, she could feel herself letting go of the bitterness. She had built a new life, a better life, and she wasn't going to let anyone, no matter who they were, take that from her. She knew that her future wasn't tied to her past. It was tied to the woman she was becoming, and to the daughter who believed in her. As time passed, her relationship with her ex-husband remained distant but respectful. He made an effort to stay involved in their daughter's life, and she kept her promise to let him. But she had no illusions about who had built this life. She had done it. She had made the decisions that had led her to this point, and she was the one who would continue to shape the future. And as she sat in her living room that night, her daughter's laughter echoing from the next room, she realized that, for the first time in her life, she was free. She was free from the past, free from fear, and free to live a life she had always dreamed of, for herself and for her daughter. The future was hers to create, and she was ready to build it, one day at a time. The days following her conversation with her ex-husband were quieter, but no less full of significance. She found herself contemplating the future more often now, and the work she had done to rebuild her life. She had put so much energy into ensuring that she and her daughter were safe and stable, that the thought of upheaval was almost unbearable. But life had a way of throwing curveballs, and when the call came, she was ready to face it, no matter how difficult it was. It was a Friday afternoon when her phone rang with a call she never expected. The caller was from the bank, and her heart immediately sank as she heard the voice on the other end. "Mrs. Green, we need to discuss an issue regarding your account." She felt a knot in her stomach. What could this be about? She had been careful with her finances, taking every step to secure her family's future. But as she listened, her worst fear began to unfold. A fraudulent transaction had occurred, one that was draining her savings. Her heart raced as she processed the information, trying to understand how this had happened. "We've already flagged the transaction," the bank representative continued. "But we need you to confirm your identity and take steps to dispute the charges." Her mind swirled with panic. This wasn't just a mistake, it was theft. Whoever had done this had taken what little she had worked so hard to build. And she knew that if she didn't act fast, it could unravel everything. The bank told her to file a claim, to contact her credit agency, and to take every precaution to protect her account. But as she hung up the phone, she felt a wave of helplessness. She had been careful, responsible, but someone had still found a way to take advantage of her. She couldn't let it slide. Her daughter was counting on her, and she wasn't about to let anyone ruin the life she had worked so hard to build. The next few days were filled with phone calls and paperwork as she fought to reverse the fraudulent charges. She met with her bank, filed a police report, and contacted the credit agencies to ensure that her identity was secure. It felt like a never-ending battle, and the stress was wearing on her. But through it all, she found herself drawing strength from the same place she had for so long. Her love for her daughter, the drive to provide a better life for her. Every time she thought she couldn't keep going, she remembered the future she was building, the life she had promised her daughter. She refused to let this setback define them. As the situation dragged on, she continued her job at the nonprofit, keeping her focus on what she could control. But when the phone rang again, the voice on the other end this time was one she didn't recognize, her manager from work. "Mrs. Green, I wanted to talk to you about something. I've been reviewing your recent performance, and I'm very impressed," he said. She was stunned. This was the last thing she expected to hear amidst the chaos. "Thank you," she said, her voice tinged with exhaustion but filled with gratitude. "But there's something else I wanted to ask you," her manager continued. "We have an opening for a senior position, and after seeing the work you've done here, I believe you're ready for this role. I'd like to offer you a promotion." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. It was a moment of triumph, a sign that all of her hard work was paying off. The promotion wasn't just a reflection of her skills, it was a recognition of everything she had done to build her life. And despite the challenges, she had kept moving forward, not just surviving, but thriving. "Thank you," she said, her voice full of emotion. "I won't let you down." As the call ended, she sat back in her chair, her mind racing. She had been facing so much: fraud, fear, uncertainty. And yet, here she was, being offered a chance to continue growing. It felt like a validation of everything she had believed in, of every step she had taken to create a better future for herself and her daughter. The next few days felt like a blur. She signed the paperwork for her promotion and finalized the dispute over the fraudulent charges. She was exhausted, but there was also a sense of accomplishment that she had not felt in a long time. She was moving forward, despite the setbacks, despite the obstacles. She had always believed in her ability to overcome anything. But this was different. This was the moment when she realized that her strength was not just in surviving. It was in creating something new. And that was the legacy she wanted to leave for her daughter. When she arrived home that evening, her daughter greeted her with a big hug and a beaming smile. "How was your day, Mommy?" she asked, her eyes full of excitement. She looked down at her daughter, her heart full of love and pride. "It was a good day, sweetheart. A really good day." She realized that, in this moment, everything was as it should be. She had faced the challenges, fought the battles, and had come out stronger for it. And the most important part was that her daughter was right there beside her, watching her fight, watching her grow. Together, they had created a life full of hope and possibilities. And no matter what came next, she knew they would face it together, just as they always had. The days seemed to move faster as the year wore on, and with each passing week, she felt more grounded in the life she had worked so hard to build. Her promotion had opened doors to new responsibilities, and her confidence grew as she rose to meet each challenge. Her daughter continued to excel in school, her laughter filling the apartment each evening as they shared stories of their day. Life, for the first time in what felt like forever, was good. But as much as everything was falling into place, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the verge of something big, something that would challenge everything she had fought for. One evening, after another long day at work, she was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through a pile of paperwork when her phone buzzed. It was an email from Mr. Stevens. The subject line simply read, "We need to talk." Her stomach dropped. She hadn't heard from him in a few weeks, and though she had always been grateful for his support, a part of her still feared that he would one day decide he had done enough. Her mind raced as she opened the message. "I need to meet with you. There's something important I'd like to discuss." The words felt like a weight on her chest. She didn't know what to expect, but she knew that whatever it was, it would be significant. They agreed to meet the following afternoon, and as the time drew closer, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The meeting was in the same sleek office where they had discussed her career and her future. When she arrived, Mr. Stevens was already there, sitting behind his desk with his usual calm demeanor. He gestured for her to sit. "Thank you for meeting with me," he said, his voice warm but serious. She nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "Of course. What's going on?" He paused for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I've been thinking a lot about where you are in your journey," he began. "You've made incredible progress, and I'm proud of everything you've accomplished. But there's something else I think we need to address." She felt her breath catch in her throat, a knot forming in her stomach. "What could it be?" "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice a little unsteady. Mr. Stevens leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "I've been offering support, resources, and opportunities, but I think it's time for you to think about the bigger picture. You've done great things with what I've given you, but now it's time to take the next step. And that means letting go of the past completely, your past fears, your doubts." Her mind raced. "Letting go of the past?" she repeated. "But I've worked so hard to get to where I am. I thought I was already doing that." "You've come a long way," Mr. Stevens acknowledged. "But sometimes, we carry baggage we don't even realize is still weighing us down. There are still remnants of the life you left behind. The self-doubt, the fear of failure, the idea that you might not deserve this success. I want to help you take the next step, but you have to let go of those old beliefs. It's time to start thinking about what comes next." She stared at him, processing his words. "But I've worked so hard to get here. How can I just let go?" Mr. Stevens smiled, a soft, understanding smile. "It's not about forgetting where you came from. It's about no longer letting it define you. The life you've built for yourself, the person you've become, that's who you are now. You can't move forward if you're still holding on to who you were." Her chest tightened. He was right, but the thought of truly letting go felt terrifying. The memories of hardship, of scraping by, and always fearing the worst, were so deeply ingrained in her that they had become a part of who she was. She had carried them with her for so long that she didn't know how to exist without them. But then she thought about her daughter, the smile on her face, the way she believed in her every single day. She couldn't keep carrying that weight forever. She had to make room for something better, for the future they deserved. "I think I'm ready," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Stevens nodded. "Good. You're more than ready. Now it's time to invest in yourself. Not just your job or your career, but in you. Your confidence, your peace, your sense of self-worth." She took a deep breath, feeling a small weight lift from her shoulders. It wasn't going to be easy, but she was finally ready to let go of the things that had been holding her back. Over the next few weeks, she worked on embracing the changes. She began to focus more on her personal growth, on her health, her well-being, and on strengthening the relationships that mattered most. She knew that taking the next step wasn't just about succeeding in her career. It was about becoming the woman she wanted to be for herself, for her daughter. Slowly but surely, the fear that had once gripped her began to fade. She still had moments of doubt, moments when she questioned her worth or her ability to succeed. But now, she recognized them for what they were: old thoughts, remnants of a past that no longer defined her. And every day, she pushed those thoughts aside, replacing them with the truth she was beginning to live. She was worthy, she was capable, and she was strong. The future was hers to shape, and with every step she took, she knew she was moving closer to the life she had always dreamed of. Her daughter continued to thrive, and she watched her with pride, knowing that the foundation they were building together was one of love, strength, and endless possibilities. The past no longer had a hold on her. It was time to look ahead, to keep moving forward, and to embrace the future she had worked so hard to create. As the days turned into weeks, she found herself slipping more and more into a rhythm of balance. The fears that had once held her back now seemed like distant memories. She was no longer worried about whether she could provide for her daughter. She knew she could. She wasn't thinking about her past failures, the times when she had felt completely alone. Now, with each passing day, she was building something steady, something that would last. Her job was going well, and she was starting to develop a sense of pride in her work. Her daughter continued to thrive at school, and every day after school, they would sit together and talk about their days. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing moment. Still, there was one thing lingering in her mind. Her ex-husband had made an effort to stay involved in their daughter's life, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he was only doing it because he felt guilty. He wasn't fully committed to being the kind of father her daughter deserved. The last time they had talked, he had promised to be better, but she wasn't sure if that was just something he was saying to ease his conscience. He hadn't followed through on so many promises before. One evening, while they were having dinner, her daughter asked if they could visit her dad. She had been asking more often, and while her daughter's excitement made her heart ache, she knew deep down that there were things that needed to be addressed. "Mom, when can we go see Dad again?" her daughter asked, looking at her with wide, hopeful eyes. The question took her by surprise. She hadn't expected it so soon, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to let him back into their lives. Not completely. "I don't know, sweetheart," she said softly, her voice gentle. "Your dad has promised to be better, but I want to make sure he keeps those promises first." Her daughter looked down at her plate, clearly disappointed, but she nodded. "I understand, Mom," she said quietly. She smiled, her heart aching for her daughter. "We'll see what happens, okay?" She could tell that her daughter wasn't satisfied with the answer, but it was the truth. She couldn't pretend that everything was fine when, in her heart, she still had doubts. It wasn't about blocking her ex-husband out of their lives. It was about making sure that when he was involved, he was fully committed. That night, as she sat in the quiet of her apartment, she thought about her ex-husband again. The conversation they had when he had come to visit her was still fresh in her mind. He had apologized, promised to do better, but she had seen the uncertainty in his eyes. She had heard those promises before, and each time they had fallen through. She wasn't sure she was ready to believe him again, but she knew she couldn't keep her daughter from her father forever. She had to find a way to move forward, but on her terms. The next day, she called her ex-husband. When he picked up, she could hear the surprise in his voice. "Hello," he said. "Hey," she replied, her voice steady but calm. "I think it's time we talked about how things are going to work with her daughter." As the months passed, life seemed to settle into a new rhythm. Her daughter was flourishing, and she herself had become more confident in her role at work. The promotion she had received months ago had opened up new opportunities, and she was beginning to realize just how much she had changed. She wasn't the same woman who had walked into the office for the first time, full of doubt and uncertainty. Now, she was stepping into a future she had never imagined. But even in the midst of this progress, there was always a lingering sense of worry. The world she was building for her daughter was still fragile, and the old fears from her past sometimes crept in. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk reviewing a report, she received a call from her daughter's school. Her heart skipped a beat as she answered. "Hello. Is this Mrs. Green?" the voice on the other end asked. "Yes," she replied, trying to keep her voice calm. "This is Mrs. Green." We need to discuss something about your daughter, the voice continued. Can you come in for a meeting? Her stomach twisted. It wasn't the first time the school had called, but each time it felt like a new weight on her shoulders. Of course, she said, trying to sound composed. When is the meeting? As soon as possible, please, the voice replied. It's about her recent behavior. Her heart sank. Her daughter had been doing so well, and the thought that something might be wrong filled her with dread. She quickly arranged to leave work early and headed to the school, her mind racing with possibilities. When she arrived, the principal, a kind but stern woman, greeted her and led her to a quiet office. Thank you for coming in so quickly, the principal said. Please have a seat. She sat down, her mind still racing. What's going on? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The principal looked at her with concern. Your daughter has been acting out lately. She's been disruptive in class, and there have been reports of her being involved in arguments with other students. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Her daughter had always been so well-behaved, so excited about school. What had happened? Is she in trouble? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The principal shook her head. Not exactly, she said gently. But we're concerned. This behavior is very unusual for her, and we want to make sure there's nothing going on that's affecting her. She nodded, understanding. She had to get to the bottom of this. I'll talk to her, she said, her voice firm. Thank you for letting me know. As she left the school, she felt a mix of confusion and concern. What could be causing her daughter to act out like this? At home that evening, her daughter was unusually quiet, and she could tell that something was wrong. Sweetheart, we need to talk, she said softly as she sat down beside her on the couch. Her daughter looked up, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and uncertainty. What's going on? Her mother asked, gently taking her hand. Her daughter looked away, her voice small. I don't know, Mom. I feel so angry sometimes. I don't know why. Her heart ached as she listened to her daughter's words. Angry about what? She asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Everything, her daughter said, her voice cracking. School is hard, and I don't feel like anyone understands me. I miss my old friends, and I don't feel like I fit in here. And I don't know what to do about it. Her daughter's words made her heart break. She had always done her best to create a stable life for them, to make sure her daughter had everything she needed. But now, she realized that she hadn't seen the full picture. Her daughter was struggling in ways she hadn't expected, and she didn't know how to fix it. I'm sorry, honey, she said, her voice full of emotion. I didn't realize you were feeling like this. But we're going to get through it together, okay? You don't have to face this alone. Her daughter nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. I just don't want to disappoint you, she whispered. Her heart broke for her. You could never disappoint me, she said, pulling her daughter into a tight embrace. I'm proud of you no matter what. We're going to work through this, and I'm here for you. Over the next few weeks, she worked closely with her daughter's school to find ways to address her struggles. They brought in a counselor, someone who could help her process her emotions and give her the tools to handle her anger and frustration. It wasn't easy, but little by little, her daughter started to open up more and more. She could see the shift in her, the way she was beginning to understand and manage her emotions better. It was a long process, but it was worth it. She realized that even though her life had changed in so many ways, she still had to be there for her daughter in new ways, too. And that meant being patient, being understanding, and giving her the space to grow. As the months passed, her daughter's behavior improved. She started to talk more openly about her feelings, and she became more confident in herself. It was a relief to see her coming back into her own. One evening, after dinner, her daughter turned to her with a shy smile. Mom, she said softly, I just want you to know I'm really happy here. Her heart swelled with pride. I'm happy too, sweetie. I'm so proud of you. And in that moment, she realized that their journey wasn't just about her own growth. It was about them both, growing together, learning together, and building a future that was full of love, understanding, and endless possibilities. As the seasons changed, so did the momentum of her life. It had been a year since she had taken that first crucial step towards building something real for herself and her daughter. The work was hard, and the challenges had not disappeared, but she had learned to navigate them with grace and strength she never knew she had. Her daughter had blossomed, and they had built a life that felt solid, secure, and full of hope. There were still moments of doubt, of course, moments when she wondered if she was doing enough, or if she was making the right decisions. But now, those moments felt less overwhelming. She had created a foundation for herself, a foundation built on self-respect, perseverance, and love. One morning, as she prepared breakfast for her daughter, she noticed that the small details of their life together were beginning to fall into place in a way that she hadn't anticipated. Her daughter had become a vibrant, independent young girl, thriving at school and becoming more confident every day. She was starting to make her own decisions, to speak her mind, and to take pride in who she was. It wasn't just her daughter who was changing, she had changed, too. She had become someone who no longer needed to rely on the kindness of others to survive. She had built her own success. She was proud of the person she had become. The phone rang just as she was cleaning up the dishes after breakfast. It was her ex-husband. Her stomach tightened as she picked up the phone. "Hello." "Hey," he said, his voice unsure. "I wanted to talk to you." "About?" Her daughter. As the sun set on another day, she sat in the quiet of her apartment, her daughter asleep in the room next door, and reflected on how far they had come. It felt like a lifetime ago that she had been struggling to survive, unsure of where her next meal would come from or if her daughter would have the medicine she needed. Now, she had built a life that was not just about getting by, it was about living. She had a job that fulfilled her, a daughter who was thriving, and the stability that had once seemed so far out of reach. But what she had come to realize over the past year was that it wasn't just about achieving success or overcoming challenges. It was about the journey, the lessons learned, the people she had met, and the strength she had discovered within herself. She had grown so much, and in many ways, her daughter had grown right alongside her. Her daughter, who had once been so quiet and reserved, was now outspoken and confident. She had made friends at school, excelled in her studies, and most importantly, she felt secure and loved. There were still challenges ahead, of course. No life was without its ups and downs. But the difference now was that she felt equipped to face whatever came next. She wasn't the woman who had once worried about every little setback. She was the woman who had faced adversity head-on, fought through it, and emerged stronger. The phone rang, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a call she had been waiting for, the results of the recent application she had submitted for a new position. She had worked hard on it, and although she wasn't sure what the outcome would be, she had given it everything she had. She picked up the phone, her heart racing. "Hello," she said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "Is this Mrs. Green?" the voice on the other end asked. "Yes," she replied. "I'm calling about your application. We're pleased to inform you that you've been selected for the position." The words felt like a dream. She had done it. She had taken a leap of faith, and it had paid off. A new opportunity, a new challenge, one she had worked hard for. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "I'm honored. I'm really excited to get started." As she hung up the phone, she sat back, a smile spreading across her face. This wasn't just another job. It was the culmination of everything she had worked for. It was a chance to grow even further, to continue building a future for her daughter and herself. She thought about her journey, about the times she had felt unsure or afraid, and how far she had come since then. And for the first time, she didn't feel afraid of what lay ahead. She felt ready. Her daughter came into the room, her face lighting up when she saw the look on her mother's face. "Mom, what's wrong? You look so happy," she said, her voice filled with curiosity. "I just got some good news," she replied, her smile widening. "I got the job I applied for." Her daughter's face broke into a grin, and she jumped into her mother's arms. "That's amazing, Mom. I knew you could do it." Her heart swelled with pride. "Thank you, baby," she whispered. "We did it." It was in that moment that she realized how far they had both come. This wasn't just about one woman achieving her dreams. It was about a mother and daughter building a future together, each of them supporting the other, each of them growing and learning as they went. As they sat together that night, sharing stories of their day, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. For the first time, she wasn't looking over her shoulder, wondering if the next obstacle would knock her down. She was looking ahead, excited for the future, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. The path ahead was filled with endless possibilities, and she was ready to walk it, with her daughter by her side. It wasn't just a story of survival. It was a story of transformation, of creating a life filled with love, strength, and endless hope. She had proven to herself that she could build something beautiful from the ground up. And now, she was ready to build even more, not just for herself, but for the daughter who had been with her every step of the way. As she kissed her daughter goodnight and turned off the lights, she felt at peace for the first time in years. The future was bright. It was theirs to shape, and she knew, no matter what challenges came their way, they would face them with the same determination, love, and strength that had brought them here. Together, they had created a life, and together, they would continue to grow, step by step. This heartwarming Black story follows a single mother's journey from struggle to triumph, as she overcomes financial hardships and rebuilds her life for her daughter. With the support of a kind billionaire, she finds strength in her resilience, navigating her fears, doubts, and challenges to create a stable and fulfilling future. Along the way, she faces difficult decisions about family, forgiveness, and trust, all while striving to be the best mother she can be. This inspiring Black story highlights themes of hope, determination, and the power of second chances, offering a powerful reminder that no matter where you start, you have the ability to change your life. As the story unfolds, the characters' growth and transformation reveal the incredible strength within each of us to overcome adversity. As they build a better future together, this Black story showcases the importance of love, hard work, and belief in oneself. In a world where everything seems uncertain, this Black story reminds us that with the right support, we can create the life we deserve, even when it feels impossible. Discover the beauty of persistence and hope in this Black story, where every challenge faced brings the characters closer to their ultimate dreams and aspirations.